can literally have a global workforce, but you still have to be able to engage them, thus meta-gauge them, so that you can not only get a high proficient amount of work out of them, but that they enjoy doing what we call empower, engage, and excite. We want to bring excitement back into the workforce.
Welcome to MetaGagement, the HR show that dives deep into the heart of employee engagement and workplace culture. Your hosts, Ann Scottlin and Dr. Lyman Montgomery, bring you a groundbreaking show that explores innovative strategies and insights to transform and elevate your organization's HR practices. Dr. Montgomery is an employee engagement expert and best-selling author, while Ann Scottlin is an acclaimed business consultant and podcaster. Together, they will unpack the complexities of modern HR challenges and reveal innovative solutions that can be immediately applied to your workplace. Please welcome Ann Scottlin and Dr. Lyman Montgomery.
Welcome back, everyone, to Season 2 with Dr. Lyman Montgomery and myself, Ann Scottlin. And we have a great surprise for you. Hopefully you caught our announcement last week. This season, our show is called MetaGagement. And Lyman, tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, the first season was all about mindset, the meta mindset. We wanted you to really think about doing things different, that out of the box thinking. Well, we heard you loud and clear. You wanted more application, and we wanted to do something a little different. And we wanted to gear this season towards those that really are at the forefront of making sure that people are engaged, and that's the HR field. And so this series that for this season is MetaGagement-HR. And what MetaGagement is, think of it this way. It's the marriage between engaging individuals at work and going beyond, above, out of the box to get that transformative results. Thus, MetaGagement. So I'm so excited about this season. Season 2. Can you believe, Ann?
I know.
Season 2. It's all about getting meta-gauged.
We're already there. And what's really amazing about this new subject and what I'm really excited about is this applies to literally everyone in business and honestly everyone in life, because we all work with people, we all work with groups, we all have teams, families, social environments. So there is nothing here that will be wasted on anyone, no matter who you are. But we do this as a special gift to our HR professionals out there. And, we've been in that field. Lyman's been in the field for, I think, 25 years. He has books published on it, certified in everything you can think of. So we know what we're talking about, and we can really bring something special and unique to the HR field. And then the other element that we brought from Season 1 is the concept of what we were calling a meta mindset. So meta in general means to go above and beyond. And in this case, we're using those tools, those neuroscience-based solutions that we taught in meta mindset in MetaGagement. How can you take your engagement and re-engagement with your employees to the next level, right, Lyman?
Absolutely. Not only that, but let's say you're an entrepreneur, right? So yes, we're geared towards the HR profession, but also if you're an entrepreneur and you have a team, even if it's a volunteer team, you still need to know, how do I engage my team? Engage, let's say you don't have a workforce, but maybe you're dealing with contractors. How do you engage contractors, whether in Upwork, Fiverr, to get them to buy into what you're doing? So again, we didn't forget about the entrepreneurs, but we wanted to focus and target on the HR community. But this is for everyone. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are thinking about starting a business, if you're thinking about building a team, even a sports team, you still need to know, how do I engage, or I like you said, and re-engage those that may have become disengaged.
Yes, and I think part of what you and I get excited about, and in the fields of neuroscience and business that we've both been involved in, is understanding that going meta, as we call it, meta mindset, engagement, it really gives us and all of you the possibility of making the possible probable. Because we all say, wouldn't it be nice if, wouldn't it be great if, wouldn't it be amazing if, all the people on my team or all my people in my company could do this. And especially when it comes to engagement with each
Yes.
other, with you, with management, with the clients, with everyone. So, but just making a wish doesn't make it come true. So we believe that the solutions that are already at work in HR have been, some of them tried and true, and some of them are still being tried. And some of the initial solutions for those things have worked partly, but maybe not as much as we all would have wished. So we would like to help make the possible probable by taking it to another level, challenging the status quo, maintaining an open mind so that we
Yes.
really help transform HR with innovative strategies and actionable steps.
You said it beautifully. The only thing that I would add to that end is think about this. During the pandemic, we saw a mass exodus of people leaving the workforce. Post pandemic, only about 65% of those returned. And the 65% that returned, they returned to a totally new workforce, new scheduling, first time in the history of work. What are these remote hybrid schedules? How do you engage a remote workforce? So now you may have a workforce that actually never have met their supervisors outside of a Teams meeting or Zoom call, because now you can literally have a global workforce, but you still have to be able to engage them, thus meta-gauge them, so that you can not only get a high proficient amount of work out of them, but that they enjoy doing what we call empower, engage, and excite. We want to bring excitement back into the workforce. We want people to feel empowered to make decisions and ultimately be engaged in the work that they do. But also, and you bring something that I absolutely love, and that is beyond what we call on the clock and off the clock. You want to talk a little bit about off the clock?
Yeah, so basically our show will have two segments. This is a little reminiscent of season one. So segment one of MetaGagement is on the clock. This is talking about on the ground, in the office, in your HR field, and other business people dealing with similar, whether it's outsourcing or management issues with people. And then part two of our show is going to be called Off the Clock. It's that simple, and it's really obvious what that means. How do you take the meta engagement principles and what we've taught in meta mindset, going above and beyond, into the rest of your life? How do you
Yes.
deal with those challenges? Because if we learn to deal with the challenges in real life, we're going to be reflecting that when we come into the office, and vice versa. So we have a tremendous opportunity, especially in the field of HR, to create an impact locally, nationally, globally, of how we live life and how we interact with other people. So we like to have fun in our off the clock section. We stay appropriate, but we're willing to hash out some of those difficult arguments, those difficult questions that some of you send in.
Yes.
So we're
Yes.
really looking forward to that as well.
And I'm just, there's a lot that we've worked on in between season one and season two. And the other thing that we've done, we got a new website launch. It is streamlined. It is easy to navigate. The last one was okay, but it's a little difficult sometimes to find things. We basically went back to the drawing board, met with our team, and said, listen, we want to have a simple process that is clean and easy. We even changed the name. You want to talk about that, Ann?
Um, well, let's see. I'll let you talk about that.
Okay.
What's the
I'm ahead of
URL?
myself. I'm ahead of myself.
But no. So the name of the website. So our URL now is metagagement.com. But if you go to the old URL, you will also
You
still
also
arrive
get
at
there.
the
Yes.
same place. So that's the really good news. So we tell a lot of stories on this show. We're going to get right to it here in a minute, keeping you on board here. If you would help us as we get off and rolling on the second season by following, like, subscribe, shoot this link to someone. This link is always available once it's aired the first time, same link to someone who might enjoy this conversation and just hanging out with us for a bit. So with that said, we're going to jump right into our first segment
Yes.
on the clock. One of the things we like to talk about doing is outpacing the disruptors. And what that means to me is we're not disrupting the disruptors, because that would be very disruptive. Okay, I know that was terrible. Outpacing the disruptors is we are anticipating the changes in the work environment and the social environment around us to such an extent that we can go meta in applying solutions before we have to wait for new disruptions. So that is
Yes.
a complicated way of saying what we mean when we say outpacing the disruptors as being part of a theme of the purpose of MetaGagement, right, Lyman?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. There's been a lot of disruption in the workplace. I spoke earlier about the pandemic. We're still in the pandemic, but we're closer to what most will consider post-pandemic. But truly, the pandemic is still going. People are still getting COVID, but not, thank goodness, not as many people are dying because of COVID, but there are complications. So COVID in and of itself was a disruptor, a major disruptor. For the first time, and we have 4 generations in the workplace. Each generation needs something different. Not only do you have the baby boomers, the XGs, or the Gen Xers, I should say, but we got the millennials as well as the Y, and then they got what's the new one? I forget.
Oh, I love
I can't
Lyman
keep
when he
up
tries
with
to
them.
talk about this. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I get myself messed up too, right? So I think we had Gen X, and then we had millennials, and then we had Gen Y, which the millennials are the 30-somethings in the environment.
Yes,
That's a very average round number.
and I don't
And
think the
the
Z's.
Gen Y's, Gen Z is Gen Z are those people breaking into the college environment right now, or
Right.
breaking into the workplace for the first time. And now we're back to Gen A, I guess, which means like the
Yes.
11-year-olds have their own generation. But yes, and every one of them has their own dynamic. That is true. And I was
Which
just
creates a
saying,
disruption in
yeah,
and of itself. Thanks, Ann. And one of the things that's important to understand, if you find yourself as let's say you're not in HR, but you are a supervisor, and you might be saying, how do I engage? Because it's differently trying to engage a 21-year-old fresh out of college, a 21, 22, 23-year-old that's fresh out of their, starting their career, entry level, and someone that might be a Gen Xer in my population, 50 plus, that we're, looking towards retirement. But then you also have the baby boomers that may be, hey, I got another 2 years, or matter of fact, a couple of months, and I'm out of here. And so, how do you keep everyone not only engaged, but what Gallup calls actively engaged, and also feel significant in their role? Because each generation needs something different. We were the generation that I grew up in, the Gen Xers. We were known as the latchkey kids, very high functioning, independent. Sometimes that gets us in trouble, not very collaborative. Whereas millennials tend to be highly collaborative. They believe in the power of the hive or the tribe. And then you have what many consider to be the Gen Ys as highly technical, and they have a much global community. Each one of those needs something different. And what MetaGagement is all about is seeing each one as an individual and not just a name on that line. And what I mean by on that line is, okay, you are a receptionist. No, you're more than just a receptionist. You're a painter. You're more than just a painter. And too often in HR, and that's how we view the workforce. You either was a number, or we identified you by your position title. We
which
didn't
is
see you
such
as
a
a person.
tragedy because all the discussions around DEI and everything else, and we're going
Yes.
to dive in like nobody's business here soon enough, is all about labels, and yet we still keep using these labels to just expect I think if anything, it creates in our minds an expectation of what a human being is going to be
Mm,
like. I don't care whether it's DEI or if it's just literally their job description, the CEO, the receptionist, any person at any level within the company, and as opposed to who the person really is. And that's part of
yes,
what we are going to be talking about here. And some of that's going to be controversial, which is addressing the whole
yes,
human in a human way. We've, in our efforts as a world community to become more inclusive and to accommodate DEI requirements and advancements, which have been phenomenal, there's also been like a certain, how would I say it, sanitization
ooh, that's
of
good.
the workplace that no longer allows us to be spontaneous human beings, to be ourselves. And people are living in a spirit of fear of insulting anyone, of accidentally doing anything. So people pull back. You're not going to get engagement when everyone's pulling back because they're afraid they're going to offend someone else. So how do we reevaluate these situations?
Oh, that's so good, and that is so good. Oh my God, we got a commercial break coming up in about literally 3 seconds.
Well, we'll just do it now then. So we're going to take a really quick break. And if you would, while we're doing that, like, subscribe, shoot this link to someone who'd love to join us, and we'll be right back.
Unleash the power of strategic neuroscience with focused Meta Mindset Inc. Boost your decision-making, sales, sustainable growth, and customer engagement. Scan the QR code now for an exclusive consultation. Elevate your profitability with focused Meta Mindset Inc.
Welcome back to MetaGagement. This is our first episode of this season. Super excited. If you missed what we're doing differently, you might want to rewind or jump back to see what we talked about already today. But MetaGagement is what engagement and re-engagement looks like in HR. It's a discussion of real world scenarios in business and in communication and particularly in HR, and how we can go meta with that. As you know, we've talked about meta mindset, and that dovetails directly into MetaGagement, which is how do we go above and beyond? And it's a whole shifting of our inner selves. It's a whole different level of operation of neuroscience-based solutions that we find are very, very effective in the workplace. So as we jump in here to the second piece of our talk today on the clock, Lyman, let's talk a little bit about the practical application. What does MetaGagement look like in real world HR scenarios, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. Meta engagement in a very easy to understand, easy to unpack, practical application is simply this. You see the people that work with you as human beings, and you have to address what's important to them. And it's about a collaborative framework of saying, are we in alignment with each other? Here are the goals, the mission, the values of the workforce. Do I have a team that's in alignment with the mission, the values, and the principles of the team? Because whenever you have someone that's out of alignment, there's going to be friction, there's going to be pain. So what meta engagement is about is saying, if someone is out of alignment, how do we get them realigned? And one way of doing that is by being more relational. I think there's two types of ways of looking at the workforce. For too long, we were positional. What's your ID? What's your job? You ever been on the airplane and you introduce yourself and someone says, generally as a guy, my name is John, Vice President of Sales. Generally speaking, not always. I've been on many, many flights like you and it's interesting. And try this the next time you're in the airport and you're sitting next to someone and you introduce yourself. Generally speaking, when I'm sitting next to a woman, she will introduce herself. Hello, my name is Jan. I'm going on vacation to visit my daughter. And they start pulling out pictures, showing you pictures, their kids. What do guys generally do? They pull out their business card. You know nothing about them other than their position. So I think that translated over into the workforce where we were highly positional. And now we have a situation where people say, no, I'm not just the janitor. I'm not just, the sales or marketing. Treat me as a human being. Do you see me? And the worst thing we can do is say, well, I don't see color. I don't see gender. I don't see ethnicity. Then basically saying I don't exist.
Do you see me? Like that lands on me. And in my own background as the actress in Hollywood and also in emotional wellness earlier in my career, that idea of completeness, of feeling seen, and for many feeling heard, both seen and heard, is for many people the most valuable element. I've heard people say to me in private consulting or coaching situations, I would rather know that I would be heard in my life than to know I was loved. That's how important. I would rather be really seen for who I am in my life than, be wealthy. Because that's what's really satisfying and important to people. And I think the example on the airplane is such a good one because sometimes we need to remember that our job as human beings, no matter what your role in the company might be, is connecting to other human beings, because it's not just for myself. It's not just for you, the other person in the seat. It's not just for my company. It's also for, stay with me here, how we are in the world together. The more we make the world a meaningful place where humans are seen and heard and respected in all their different positions and all their differences, the sooner the workplace becomes more streamlined. As we streamline the workplace, we get to actively affect our culture. Look how much, good, bad, or indifferent, a lot of good, Hollywood has influenced the culture in the United States and thus globally in the last, 100 years. Unbelievable amount of influence. And the norms that often start in screen or with people who are leading the charge in one area or another often carry out over next into the workplace. And this is where the rubber meets the road, where it goes from principles and concepts to actual governing systems, to actual systems within a company. And from there, it drifts down into education and into our families and into our social lives. So when you meet someone on the plane, it's not about comparing business cards. It's always about, how can I connect this person as a human being? And you know what? I've learned so many times, Lyman, and I love people and I talk to everybody. And so do you. I know you do. When I don't come on strong about myself, when I ask them lots of questions, first of all, they almost always turn around and ask me then a few minutes later. They're like, oh my God, I've been going on for 5 minutes. So tell me about yourself. And now they're really listening. When you're just blabbing about yourself at the beginning, they're like, oh boy, here goes another one, right? So making those connections, and who knows, it could just be a referral. It could just be a friend. But connecting on that human level, that's the difference. That's what's going meta. It's a meta intention. You're not just alive to make a sale. There's a difference. You go beyond.
The big difference. And it's about those connecting points. If this is what I would say, point number 2, when it comes to how do you meta engage or meta gauge the workforce? Not only make sure that you see them as a human being first and foremost. The second part of that is, what do you know about them? For example, how do they wish to be communicated? Is it through text message, email, or when the last time you just picked up the phone?
Oh, Lyman, you know that we certain generations don't like to use the phone anymore. No, I'm not.
Oh, I know. My son, that generation.
My younger cousin who's like, don't call me, text me. I don't answer phone.
Right.
Okay. And don't email me, because she doesn't even have an email account. She only uses.
There you go. Those different generations. See, different generations.
She has a full-time job. Right. So
I called my oldest son the other day, and it said, I'm sorry, the number you called is not in service. So I called his mom, and she's like, oh, he hasn't set up his voicemail. So I sent him a text. I said, hey, Cameron, Dad's trying to reach you. Your voicemail's not set up. Here's the reply. Dad, we don't listen to voicemail. Text me.
That's amazing. Case in point. Excellent. Excellent.
He made your point exactly. He was like, Dad, we don't listen to voicemail. Just text me. That
But
takes
that
too
is
much
a way
time.
of that is a way of showing appreciation to another person in any environment, which is how they want to be communicated with.
Yes.
Instead of
Yes.
forcing people into, now there has to be systems. So
Yes.
it can't be completely abstract, but on a personal level, or on a casual level, even within the workplace, those little things that show I respect your preferences as a human.
I think that's the key, preference. Maybe I should preface it by saying, what's your preferred method of communication? That's probably a better way of saying it. Because if I understand your preferred method of communication, and if I'm only using one method, let's say email, and I'm dealing with a generation that don't even check emails or let alone voice messages, there's going to be friction. But if I establish an expectation, listen, I understand you prefer text messages. However, the culture is, let's say, email. But what I will do is, let's get a group text and I send out an email, but also a text, because if I need something quick, and I understand you may respond quicker to a text than having to go through 100 to 200 emails trying to figure out, what part, especially these long email threads where you got 15, 20 people saying, me too, yes, and it can get lost. So I understand that. The last point that I would say, how do you make it practical? Number one, make sure that you see them as human beings. Number two, ask their preferred method of communication. And third, and this is perhaps the most important, and that is give them grace. Give grace.
I love
Too
that.
often, we want people to be like us. How come you can't be like John? Because I'm not John. I'm Lyman. So give grace. Set the expectation, but understand people need room to grow. If you take a plant and you stifle, one person told me, if you take a fish and you put a fish that's used to being in a large pond in a little tiny bowl, guess what will happen? It will only grow in proportion to the bowl. But if you take that fish and put it in an aquarium, it will grow in proportion to the aquarium. Now imagine what happens if you take that fish that DNA wise is used to being in a lake or ocean. You put that thing in a pond, guess what? It will grow proportion to the pond. What am I saying? The more room and space that you give people and you allow them to make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, correct the mistakes, the more they will grow and succeed.
Absolutely. And the more we get to benefit from the inherent skill and wisdom and talent of people, that by letting them expand beyond the cookie cutter, right? Expanding
Yes.
beyond the cookie cutter. I'll use an example of neurodivergent professionals, or what I like to call neuroconvergent, because that's what we all are in
I
the end.
like
Because
that.
we can't all have something. We all are just human. So, but the coming together, allowing people who have different and unusual behaviors to help us take our businesses to the next level because they excel so tremendously in a particular area, and respecting that. Social intelligence versus just academic certification. Massively important. Doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means that there are benefits to both. If you have a whole bunch of one kind of person, you're going to have a very lopsided team. And we're not going to go into this today. We have a whole assessment that we've designed to help share with you about that as well. So yes, I agree. Really keeping people inclusive, being gracious, being generous, I think more than
Yes.
anything. Being generous is such an amazing opportunity as a human being, and especially in the workplace, because that's where people tend to think about fairness as opposed to generosity. Now, you can't have one person being generous and the other 9 just wanting to be fair, because it doesn't work well. But if you can get 9 people who are willing to be a generous human being in their environment, and 1 person who's going to be a dissident no matter what, you still have really changed your environment. So being generous, I think, is the greatest. It's the greatest gift we have as human beings, the greatest opportunity. Well,
Yes.
hey, I think we're already to our second commercial break, where we're going to be gone just for a tiny few seconds here. And then we're going to come back and jump into our very last segment for the day, which is off the clock. How does MetaGagement, how does MetaMindset work in the real world when we go home, when we leave the office, when we
Yes.
go out with the team in the evening? Let's see how that works. All right. Please like and subscribe. Keep this coming. We love you guys, and send us your questions to our email or go to the website, metagagement.com. We'll be right back.
Unleash the power of focused meta mindset lunch and learn sessions. Sharpen problem-solving skills, spark innovation, foster collaboration, and build adaptability and resilience. Elevate your team's success and profits. Discover more at www.focusedmetamindset.com.
Welcome back to our last segment of today on MetaGagement, our first episode of this new season, where we're talking about how engagement and re-engagement can be taken to the next level in HR and in all of our human relationships, including the off-the-clock relationships, right, Lyman?
Off the clock. And that's something that we were very intentional about, is understanding when people leave work. And this is where I've said corporation businesses, especially within DEI, HR, the C-suite is a little schizophrenic. We will say things like this, Ann. Whatever happened at home, leave it at the doorstep when you enter the workplace. Now, that makes a lot of sense. The problem is, should that also work when I leave work? That I should leave work at work, so when I get home, I can meta-gage my family? Help us out, Ian.
Well, I think this is the whole thing about, work-life balance is out the window. It's no longer relevant. Then a couple of years ago, we were all on work-life integration because it made more sense in a post-COVID environment. And now it's more about, we're a whole person wherever we are.
Yes.
Many of us work remotely, not all, but many people do. And even the environment is still home when we're home. So we have to start looking at the whole person. And if you come into an office, you are bringing what you have at home with you, the stresses of the day. Doesn't mean you have to share every intimate detail with everyone in your office space, but it also means that we need to take account of you in your humanity.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just a number. You're not just a cookie cutter. You're not just a badge. You're a human who has all these different elements. And I think, again, the richness of what we offer to each other as human beings is by including ourselves in a bigger space, finding out what connects us. One of the things I always say, off the clock, not on the clock too, but off the clock, is what do you have in common as opposed to what's different about you? We tend to use our eyes and sometimes our ears to instantly judge differences. It is the human nature. It's even part of the animal kingdom. There is, a noticing that goes on, right? We do see, you can't pretend not to see certain things. I mean, we have phrases that say you don't see color and this and that and the other, but those have a different meaning. So we do see. We see what we see, but the question is, how do we connect in a real way without just creating that judgment? How do we create open? How do we go meta in line at the grocery store? How do we go meta with the next door neighbor who really makes us crazy? I could give a whole litany of stories about a next door neighbor of mine who was driving the whole neighborhood absolutely crazy. The homeowners association wanted to get them to move out and they couldn't. If anyone's ever lived in a homeowners association, you know what I'm talking about. But I see every one of these opportunities is great because it's an out of the office experience to practice the same way of being. We are the same person. So how can we apply these tools outside? And I'm sure you have your own stories.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, And it reminded me again how the workplace has become this sort of revolving door of craziness, okay, and disharmony. And yet we say we value diversity, we value equity, we value diversions of thought, diversity of thoughts. But yet in practice, we do the opposite when we get home. For example, we will be more tolerant of an employee and get home and have zero patience for family members, for friends. And we use the excuse, I'm sorry, I'm busy. I have work to do. And I think part of the problem is that we're just now starting to talk about taking time to decompress before you go into the home, sitting in your car and just relaxing, maybe taking a different route, take the longer route home. If you know that you're going to be irritated taking the expressway and stuck in traffic, what if you took the scenic route to give you that time mentally to decompress? So when you get home, you can be there and show up as a full, attentive, in the moment person. What if we also did that going to work? What if we decompress before we get in the office? We know we got a lot of work to do. Are we getting up early enough? Are we rushing? You know, when I used to go into the office, and if I got up late, it seemed like my entire day I was behind. I couldn't find my keys. I couldn't find my glasses. It seems like, I got behind. Every car was doing 20 miles an hour. I hit every light. And so when I finally got to the office, it took me literally like 20 or 30 minutes to get my head straight. Have you experienced that? I know you're out in California.
Oh yeah, I was thinking all those freeway illustrations was like the 405, the 101, the Santa Monica Freeway. Yeah, if you wanted like really lose your mind. Uh, yeah, and I think there's a compounding effect, so
That's good.
from a neuroscience perspective as well, there's the element of we tend to see something go wrong, and once we're thrown off that curve, it's like
Yes.
we're driving with one flat tire. No matter what you do, it feels like you just careen off into the same
Mm,
direction. And that's the opportunity we have to bring it around. I had one of those days just this week where, I mean, like, I don't know, I was late. I had to drop off the dogs at grooming. I didn't have a lunch packed, and I'm trying to eat really healthy this month. And then at the very last minute, I lost my keys because someone had borrowed them. And I was then 20 minutes late just leaving. And then I had the address in my calendar wrong for the groomers who I'd never gone to before. So I went to the wrong one. And my day just kept going like this. I was just like, okay.
hmm
So by the time I got to work, so I had to just be smart. For me, charging straight into my workload, or in the reverse, if I was coming home, is not going to do anyone any favors.
hmm
It's part of that emotional wellness that is things that we should teach ourselves to do in all aspects of our life, in work, at home, taking 3 slow, deep breaths, just getting a grip with yourself. And I was going to say that as something you made me think of earlier, which was, how do we come into our home in the afternoon, the evening, whenever that is, and how do we really see and be present with the people there? Uh, how are you seeing and being present with yourself?
That is
Because
awesome.
every work that we do begins with us internally. And if you're nice to people at work and rude to people at home, it's
I've
because you
seen it.
haven't made personal growth. You're only doing it at work so you don't get fired. Right?
That is true. I've seen people literally do that where they put on airs, right? They put on this mask, especially HR, because we are the policy holders, right? Or enforcers, the policy police, one person said. And so if we're talking about a respectful workplace and we get irritated and we fly off the handle, then we're not being true to ourselves. But the truth of the matter is, we get upset as HR, we get angry, we just aren't allowed to do it in public. So you have to have that restroom stall break where you go in there and you literally just, as you mentioned, 3 deep. What I'm doing for those who are listening, breathe in through your nose, swallow, count to 4, and then exhale. And it's amazing when you allow the oxygen, your blood to get oxygenated. Sometimes it's literally saying, hey, I need to go take a break and go outside and get some fresh air. Because if all you're doing, to your point, is charging full steam ahead, you're going to knock people over.
You're going to crack at some point.
You're going to crash.
And if you have a gym in your company, maybe go take some time out on the bag, whatever. Because we have also created our own issues for another day, totally different topic, of internalizing all of the physical, emotional, psychological, and physical pressure that we experience both at home and in the workplace without creating enough physical cleansing, enough outlets to get that out. You can't stand up on the table and scream and yell at people at work, but how are you supposed to get that, anger out of your body, for example? So there's so many ways that we can help people just live healthier. And by the whole person at home, every environment, on the plane, at the gym, wherever you are, at the post office and at work, helping us all shift into
here's something that my wife and I, especially we've had like a tough day, clients don't show up, that happens, or you're dealing with some bad news and you have to go into a meeting, a staff meeting, and you just got some horrible news, whether it's a good friend, a family member might be sick or may have passed away, and you cannot break down because literally you're going into a meeting. How do you deal with that? And also coming home, something that my wife and I have put into practice, and that's this. For my wife, she needs about 30 minutes of me time. Mm-hmm. All right. For me, I need about 15 minutes. I need that much. But you got to give each other space, because if I come home from work or come out, because I work remotely, if I come out of my office and I say, honey, you won't believe blah, 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 and I have not given her that opportunity to decompress and give her 30 minutes of alone time, it is going to be a very intense conversation and feelings get hurt. And so you have to give each other, I don't know about you and John, you kind of have that same sort of, what is that, space, give each other space, be gracious with that. Mm-hmm. Because even if it's real important, I will say, hey, honey, this is a good time to talk. The other thing that I highly recommend is my wife and I, we've set up weekly touch base meetings. We're on Sundays. We get together and we talk about the week. We plan the week. So it gives us an opportunity to reconnect. Now, I think it's very helpful, and get your opinion on this, that people set up standing meetings. Or maybe not call them meetings, but touch points. Maybe that's a better word, touch points. I don't want people to say, well, you sound corporate. You got to meet with your wife.
But I think touch points, I think that's a really, really good, it's actually a really good topic for on the clock and off the clock. And we might even want to come back to that next week or in a future episode. Yes. Since we're already out of time today, this has just flown by. We're so glad you joined us here for On the Clock, Off the Clock, talking about meta-gagement, meta-mindset, how we can take it to the next level, how we can anticipate trends and find workable solutions. I hope you will come back next week. So our new broadcast time is the same day, always on Fridays, but now it's going to be Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's 8 a.m. Pacific time, right here on whatever platform you're watching now. If you would please subscribe and like, and tell us what you think. Shoot us an email on our website or scrolling here in the notes today. And just tell us what your questions might be as well. So we'd love to get your feedback as we go forward. And we can't wait. We're already getting the next episode ready. So can't wait to talk to you then. Any closing thoughts, Lyman?
go get MetaGaged.
I love it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. We'll see you next time.
Take
Bye.
care. Goodbye.
Bye.